Srimad Bhagavatam, Our Life and Soul, Canto 7, Chapter 10, Text number 5, 7.10.5. Can you hear me, those of you that are online? Hello?
I can hear you. Namaste.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Narayani. So 7.10.5. Ashano navaivrityuha Swamin yashita atmanaha Naswamin britaya swamyam Ichanyo rati chashishaha Ashasano navai brityaha Swaminyashisha atmanaha Naswamin britaya swamyam Ichanyo rati chashishaha Ashasano navai brityaha Swamin ashisha atmanaha Nasvami britya swamyam Ichanyo rati chashishaha Ashasano navai brityaha Swamin ashisha atmanaha. Oh. No, over there. Mataji. Ashasano navai brityaha Swamin ashisha atmanaha Naswami britaya swamyam Ichanyo rati chashisha Ashashanaha. A person who desires in exchange for service not vai, indeed, brityaha, a qualified servant or pure devotee of the Lord. Swamini, from the master. Ashishaha, material benefit. Atmanaha, for personal sense gratification. Nor. Swami, the master. Brityataha, from the servant. Swamyam, the prestigious position of being the master. Ichan, desiring. Yaha, any such master who. Rati, bestows. Cha, also. Ashishaha, material profit. Translation: a servant who desires material profits from his master is certainly not a qualified servant or pure devotee. Similarly, a master who bestows benedictions upon his servant because of a desire to maintain a prestigious position as master is also not a pure master. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Nice verse, huh? As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7.20, kamais taishta rita jnana prapadyante nya devata. Those whose minds are distorted by material desires, that's rita jnana, distorted by material desires, surrender unto demigods. A demigod cannot become master, for the real master is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demigods, to keep their prestigious positions, bestow upon their worshippers whatever benedictions the worshippers want. For example, once it was found that an asura took a benediction from Lord Shiva, by which the asura would be able to kill someone simply by placing his hands on that person's head. Such benedictions are possible to receive from the demigods. If one worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, the Lord will never offer him such condemned benedictions. On the contrary, it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam 7.10.5, Yasyaham anugranami harishye tadhamnam shanai. If one is too materialistic, but at the same time wants to be a servant of the Supreme Lord, the Lord, because of his supreme compassion for the devotee, takes away all his material opulences and obliges him to be a pure devotee of the Lord. Prahlad Maharaj distinguishes between the pure devotee and the pure master. The Lord is the pure master, the supreme master, whereas an unalloyed devotee with no material motives is the pure servant. And one who is unnecessarily bestows benedictions upon his servant to keep his own prestigious position is not a real master. So I'm going to go back to text 3, where this is text 5, so 2 verses ago. Look if you have a handheld device, you can look text 3, where Prahlad says that Lord Nrsingadev, or Lord Vishnu, sent me to this material world to exhibit the symptoms of a pure devotee. So that's a very clear, emphatic explanation of who Prahlad Maharaj was in his previous life. He was a resident of Vaikuntha, sent by the Supreme Lord to teach. Now, not to confuse anybody, but to be fair, in each day of Brahma, well, each of the 4 yuga cycles, there may be different appearances of the Lord. Certainly, in each day of Brahma, Krishna appears, and Lord Chaitanya appears once in a day of Brahma. However, some of the other incarnations of the Lord just appear more than one in one day of Brahma, but during different yuga cycles. Clear, right? Different yuga cycles. Okay. Many of you have an idea, maybe you know more than an idea, that amongst the 6 Goswamis, Sanatana Goswami is credited for having written Hari Bhakti Vilas. Hari Bhakti, you know the meaning. Vilas, it's a pastime or a description of it's a how-to manual for performing bhakti. That's what, in simple language, what Hari Bhakti Vilas is. And in that Hari Bhakti Vilas, it describes how a Vaishnava can live his life. And one of the sections in Hari Bhakti Vilas is how to observe Ekadasi and the glories of Ekadasi. I don't know of an available English translation, but there are sections that have been translated. So one of them on the section of Ekadasi, Sanatana Goswami makes a reference to a passage from Bhavishya Purana, Brihan Nrsinga Purana, where it describes a different Prahlad, or a different prior life of Prahlad, having to do with Ekadasi. And I can summarize it, but I think I'd like to read it. So let's summarize it, and then we'll read it. In his previous life, Prahlad was a Brahmana somewhere. It doesn't say where. No, yes, it does. Avanti. Avanti is the same place where Sandipani Muni had his school. Avanti, or Avantipur. Now it's Ujjain, for those of you who know your geography in India. In fact, Bhakti Swami established that temple in Ujjain with the idea, the meditation in mind, that that's the place where Sandipani Muni previously lived and taught Krishna, Balaram, and others, Sudama, Vipra. So Avanti is a place of Brahmanas, and there was one Brahmana, doesn't give his name, but inadvertently he was married, or he had a girlfriend, and inadvertently they had a quarrel, and so she fasted, he fasted, and because he fasted on Ekadasi, in his next life he became Prahlad. So I'm just going to read. So it's a different description than verse 3 of Canto 7, chapter 10. Prahlad said, "O Supreme Lord, I bow down to you. O Lord Nrsingadev, I offer my obeisances to you. I am your devotee. O Lord of Lords, I now express to you my heartfelt inquiry. O Lord, how did I develop such intense devotion for you? O my Lord, kindly tell me, how did I become your exalted devotee?" Lord Nrsingadev said, "Oh, greatly learned one, oh, my son, please listen carefully as I explain to you the reason for your devotion to me that has made you very dear to me." I think next Ekadasi you'll be a little more fired up to observe Ekadasi carefully. Listen to this. In ancient times, you were born as a Brahmana, but you did not study any of the scriptures. Oh, here, your name was Vasudev, and you became attached to a prostitute, not just a girlfriend, but a prostitute. In that birth, you became so attached to a prostitute that you did not bother to perform any pious activity except a single vow in relation to me. As a result of observing that vow, you developed exalted devotion for me. Prahlad then said, "O Nrsingadev, O Achyuta, O Supreme Lord, who was my father in that lifetime? What was my duty? How did I observe your vow, even though I was attached to a prostitute? Kindly explain all this to me in detail." Lord Nrsingadev said, "In ancient times, there was a Brahmana who was well versed in Vedic literature. He lived in the city of Avantipur and was known as Vasu Sarma. Probably Vasu Sharma, but this pious Brahmana used to perform fire sacrifice every day. He was very expert in performing all kinds of Vedic rituals, and as such, he would satisfy the best of demigods by performing the Agnishtoma sacrifice. In that state of living, he did not commit any sinful activity. His wife was very pious and humble. She was famous throughout the three worlds. She was chaste, expert in performing all kinds of pious activities, and always eager to serve her husband. That exalted Brahmana begot 5 sons within the womb of his wife. These sons were very pious, learned, and devoted to their father. Among them, you were the youngest, and you became attached to a prostitute. Due to being attached to a prostitute, you became accustomed to drinking wine and performing other sinful activities so that you never engaged in the study of the Vedas. You spent most of your time at the house of the prostitute. One day, however, you and she quarreled. Because of that quarrel, you missed your meal that day, and as a result, you unknowingly observed a sacred vow in relation to me. Last sentence. Because of that quarrel with the prostitute, you did not sleep the entire night. The prostitute also did not eat anything, nor did she sleep that night in your association. So there's different appearances of Prahlad. I thought I would share that with you. Hari Bhakti Vilas, very authoritative. Sanatana Goswami. So back to the theme of this morning's verse, because yesterday's verse, looking back, was, please don't tempt me. I'm not a merchant where I do something to get something. One who does something to get something is not a proper servant. And so he was politely and appropriately, from the position of a pure devotee, he was declining to accept something. Now, he could have asked for the Lord's eternal service, but specifically, he's teaching the way of pure devotion. And so he's declining some material profit. Now, this morning's verse is underscoring the same idea, and it's also taking that same idea and flipping it over. So saying that the devotee that wants something from the master is not a proper servant of the master. And the flip side is the master specifically, there's no harm in offering something to a servant or a student or something. But if one is doing those things simply to maintain a prestigious position, the motive is impure when giving something, then that's not a suitable master either. So an unsuitable master can't give pure bhakti, and the bhakta who wants something and eagerly petitions for that something is not on the platform of a pure Vaishnava. So he's teaching the way, just as from the verse number 3, this is verse 5. Prahlad is teaching the way of pure devotional service. Now, we touched on this. We'll just go there again. Is it okay to ask for something? And from Bhagavad Gita, we know it's not only okay. Krishna looks favorably upon such persons. He considers such persons his devotee. You know the verse. Chatur vidha, 2 categories. Bhajante mam, 2 categories. Worship me. Wanting something. I want, or I want. And so that's the fuel in their tank. That's their inspiration behind their worshiping the Supreme Lord. And Krishna looks smilingly upon such persons, and he reciprocates. That is, they're in distress, so Krishna, he doesn't have to, but he mitigates their distress, or they're in a impoverished condition, so he mitigates their He doesn't have to. Sometimes he doesn't. And it prolongs the impoverished condition or the distressed condition, or satisfying their curiosity. He satisfies their curiosity. Those that have knowledge and approach him out of knowledge, of the 4, that's the better or the best of the four. But none of those are in the category of pure bhakti. Because commonly, aside from those that are out of gratitude, do something because they got something. That's one of the features of gratitude. You receive something, so you feel grateful, so you want to do something. That's good. Gratitude is good. But gratitude and doing something out of gratitude is not the same as pure bhakti. It's wonderful. Serving out of gratitude is wonderful. It's more than just wanting something and then you keep wanting something, keep wanting something. But then higher is out of gratitude. But gratitude isn't yet pure bhakti. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that doing something out of gratitude or doing something because it's to be done. It's the very nice teachings, Srimad Bhagavatam. Yesterday, during class and yesterday evening, there was some discussion of Rupa Goswami's definition of pure devotional service. So I'll remind you, Anya Abhida Shunya. Remember that? Jnana Karmaja Navratam. Remember that discussion? So, whereas pure devotion, there isn't another or anya abhilas, desire. There are different words for desire, and one of them is abhilas. Anya abhilas shunya, specifically jnana and karma. And jnana is like a big bucket, and jnana is another big bucket. So there isn't a desire to get this or get that. And so in exchange for wanting this or that, I do devotional service. So when that's removed, then that's what you don't do. What do you do? So that definition of bhakti is given by Rupa Goswami. Now supposing it's there, because we discussed this, supposing it is there, is it okay? Yes, it's okay. And will Krishna fulfill that karma or jnana abhilas? He may. And then again, he may not. That's what's in the purport here. This reference saying when Hari is very kind and he sees this Anya Abhilash in the heart of his devotee, he'll say no. And not only he'll say no, he may put that devotee into some hardship by taking everything away. So we discussed this a little bit. Hari means one who takes away. That's one of the meanings of Hari. But the same Hari who takes away, no matter how much you want to hold on to stuff, he's got too many hands and he takes everything. He doesn't always do that, but that's showing special favor. And at the same time, he has so many hands he can give more than one can handle. Because that's another feature of Hari. He doesn't just take away, he gives. He takes away the inauspicious and gives auspicious. We had some discussion yesterday. What does auspicious mean? Favorable for one's position in bhakti, or in that spiritual auspiciousness. Like Ekadasi is spiritually auspicious. Or residing in a place like this temple where one can see the deity daily. So that's transcendental auspiciousness. It creates an atmosphere that's transcendentally auspicious, favorable for the unfolding of bhakti. And taking prasadam is favorable for the unfolding of bhakti. The opposite is also true. Prabhupada was saying, this, I was hearing just this morning, taking that which is not offered to Krishna, that's sin. It's right in Bhagavad Gita. So it's a small thing, but it's a big thing. So we take only Krishna Prasadam. And that means it's the fruit of that which has been offered to Krishna. The same item offered to Krishna makes it spiritualized, and without makes it sinful or bhoga. So the pure master may very well, Krishna may very well give necessities. Krishna may give more than necessities. And if Krishna gives more than necessities, that's just fine. Now, when you have more than necessities, what do you do with those more than necessities? If you're Krishna conscious, you can say no. Or you can say thank you, and then that which is more than what is necessary, you utilize in service to Krishna. You give in charity or whatever is the appropriate utilization, and there can be many appropriate utilizations of more than what is necessary. But when, by nature, for a Vaishnava, is charitable. It's one of the characteristics of a Vaishnava. They're compassionate, they're kind. If somebody doesn't have, they want to give. If whatever they can, they like to give. So back to this thought on Bhaktivinoda Thakur expressing that service out of duty and service out of love are on a different platform. I want to spend some time with that. Service out of duty is because it's to be done. In Kapila Dev's teachings, after going through a full description of devotional service, Kapila Dev to Devahuti, after a full description of devotional service being pure, Devahuti asks a question, I'm paraphrasing, beginning of chapter 29. Okay, got it. Devotional service is pure, but what if your consciousness isn't pure? What happens? Is it possible to engage in devotional service if you're influenced by the modes of nature? Hopefully the answer is yes. And the answer is yes. Because that's the hope, is devotional service is purifying. Then Kapila Dev describes devotional service by someone who's influenced by the mode of ignorance, someone that's in the mode of passion, someone that's in the mode of goodness. A devotional service that's in the mode of goodness is characterized by doing that which ought to be done. The mode of goodness is, I serve because it's meant to be done. It's good. My mother taught me don't steal, so I don't steal. My mother taught me don't tell a lie, so I don't tell lies. And in devotional service, in goodness, I do those things because it's pleasing to Krishna. That's the motivation. I want to do it because it's to be done. I don't do things, and I do things because they're to be done or not to be done. Devotional service and goodness. That's good. And there's devotional service that's not mixed with even the mode of goodness. So it's not done out of duty, but out of love. Yesterday evening, those of you that were with us yesterday evening, I attempted in a simple way to describe this by contrasting karma yoga with bhakti. And bhakti is out of love. You do or do not do out of love, which is not on the same platform as duty. Duty, so go back to gratitude. Gratitude, if it grows, can become love. Just like the question asked yesterday, that verse where swadharma can lead to paradharma. Remember that discussion? Mataji asked that question from Bhagavad Gita. So gratitude can lead to love, but gratitude can stay on the platform of mode of goodness. It doesn't guarantee that you do your duties because they ought to be done, and that therefore you're going to come to Shuddha Bhakti. Doesn't mean, okay, then I can neglect doing things that ought to be done, or acting from the platform of gratitude, or being grateful to Krishna for supplying what he's supplying, or a child being grateful to mother and father because they've supplied necessities, and in many cases more than necessities. So gratitude is good, and better than good is transcendental, and transcendental is out of love, not simply because I received something, so now I'm obliged, duty bound is the right thing to do something back, to give something back. That's good. Cultured people, civilized people live by those principles of goodness. That's good. And better than good is transcendental. And that platform of love, which Prahlad Maharaj from verse number 3 said, he was instructed by the personality of Godhead to teach the way of pure devotional service. It's everything is done out of love. That's what we were discussing yesterday evening. I'm just repeating so that the message becomes a little more clear, or hearing it again from a different angle, it helps clarify the understanding. The Uttama Bhakti is pure. Bhakti is Uttama Bhakti. And Uttama Bhakti is, we aspire for Uttama Bhakti, following the teachings of Prahlad and others, that there isn't some desire to be fulfilled. And if there is some desire that's fulfilled, what do you do about that? Not just, I'm now obliged because I received something. There's gratitude in one's heart for receive something. That's then transcendental gratitude. It's yet a further impetus because it's a loving exchange. I'll end with this, just referring as I did yesterday to the Sudama Brahman story. A section I really like in that narration is when Sudama he visited Krishna in Dwarka. And to visit Krishna in Dwarka, he walked, and it took him the whole day to get from his home, little humble dwelling, to get to Dwarka. And on the way to Dwarka, his heart's anticipation was again meeting with Krishna. It's very nice, very, very, very wonderful. Like Akrura, when he was riding in his chariot going to meet Krishna in Vrindavan, he was absorbed. Details and details and details of his absorption and anticipating meeting Krishna. And when he saw the footprints of Krishna, he fell out of his chariot and rolled in the dust of Vrindavan, calling out loudly, "What mercy, what mercy." And then a little later he saw Krishna. So the anticipation of meeting Krishna is very wonderful. And that's what Sudama was doing. On the way, anticipating meeting Krishna. On the way back, it was, Krishna is so kind. Krishna is so kind. He knew what I came to see him for. He knew that I came for something material. And he knew that I felt badly about asking for something material, so I didn't even ask. He didn't even ask. His wife sent him there. He didn't ask, but Krishna knew. And so Sudama is contemplating, if Krishna had asked me, why have you come? I would have had to tell him, because I'm a Brahmin, I have to be truthful. But he didn't even ask me. Krishna is so kind. Krishna is so kind. And all the way back, Krishna is so kind. And when he got back, he didn't find his house anymore. Instead, he found a giant palace. What happened to my house? I was here just yesterday. What happened? And from the palace came a woman who he didn't even recognize. Who are you? I'm your wife. Oh, oh yeah, you're my wife. But you look different. You're dressed nicely in ornaments, and then he understood. I mean, his wife understood when she woke up in the morning. The little cottage where they stayed was no longer a little cottage. It was this palace. And there's not only a palace, there were maid servants to assist her, and this and that and the other thing. It was like, wow, this is Krishna's reciprocation with my husband asking him. I knew that Krishna would be very kind and supply, because he's maintaining the whole Yadu dynasty. Why not his dear friend and Brahmin devotee, my good husband Sudama? So she just put two and two together and said that was Krishna's arrangement. But Sudama didn't know that, because it was deliberate on Krishna's part to not ask him, although he knew. And so then his meditation was, Krishna is so kind. Krishna is so kind. Even I didn't ask him, he knew. And look what he did, Krishna, because now my wife is happy, and now I got to see Krishna, and Krishna is so kind. So without and with, there wasn't any difference. And he didn't start living a life of opulence, because his heart's disposition was simplicity. It specifically said he continued to sleep on the floor and eat very little. You know, his lifestyle didn't change, even though there was opulence surrounding him. His lifestyle didn't change when there wasn't opulence surrounding him. And so his platform was pure devotion. His platform wasn't duty, his platform was love. And he was living according to his swadharma, his psychophysical nature. He was a brahmana. He did his brahmana duties. And he just had a liking for only bare necessity. That's all. That was his liking. So the reciprocation was Hari gave everything. I mean, it's not just a house and food. It's a palace with gardens and everything, opulence like anything. And his mind wasn't disturbed. Mind wasn't disturbed with. So that's the platform of love. And the platform of duty, one can become disturbed. Platform of goodness, supposing, think of something that's not nice. And the mode of goodness person can become disturbed, because the lower modes are present when goodness is there. However much goodness is there, the lower modes still can be activated by something. But the transcendentalist, so that he's Prahlad, conclusion. Prahlad is teaching the way of pure devotional service. It's not that others are not also, it's just there's varieties of ways to teach the same thing. And the Bhagavatam wants to turn our attention to coming to the stage of pure devotional service, although we're not there yet. And hearing teachings of Prahlad and hearing the exalted position of exalted devotees gives us inspiration, a clear picture, what it looks like, and an aspiration to move in that direction in our lives. Therefore, hearing is so important. You remember the brahmacharis, the very first class was this one. Pursuit of happiness is not out there. The pursuit of happiness is within. And that within is a reciprocation of loving exchanges with Krishna. And so we're not there yet. But that at least we should know what the goal is. And inspired by those who have achieved that goal or are in the process of achieving that goal, move in that direction ourselves. That's the Hare Krishna movement. At least, that's the precept, that's the teaching that we've been given. And then there's different persons moving at different paces and different ways. But that's the same diet that we've all been given, the diet of Krishna's mercy. See if there's some discussion. Mataji? You can ask both of them.
Maharaj, I have 3 questions.
Okay.
My first question, it's not super clear, but I'll say it. The whole class was very nice. You were explaining the fact about only motivation being love. And I was thinking, like, as devotees, we're from the very beginning trained, like, we're not doing service for money and stuff like that.
Say it again slower. There's devotees saying...
From the very beginning in our Krishna consciousness, the training is there that we're doing voluntary service.
Yes.
So money is not an attraction. That's not a difficult one to kind of overcome. But when you were saying that, even gratitude is like a motivation, and I was thinking about it, that we do need attention and things like that, and with senior devotees around. But when you say that there be no other motivation, that seems like a scary thing.
It's elevated. It's elevated. Let's take a look at our spiritual master, our founder Acharya. Recognition and appreciation, that category, is a need. It's a need for many people. For a pure devotee, it's not a need. For many people, it is. And when you receive, you feel something. You feel some kindness and some recognition, some acknowledgement. It's not that we shouldn't give all those things. Wow, Prabhu, you dressed the deity so nicely this morning. Or, our friend the cook, this sabji was really, really good. Or the Sunday feast. You care to, so we express our gratitude. I noticed you were quietly going out of your way to show kindness to another person who needed something. Fantastic. So, it's human. It's not that don't do those things because you may be stimulating somebody's material involvement with the modes of nature. We don't stop those things, but we do those things in relation to Krishna. The perfect example is our founder Acharya. For 1 year, nothing when he came to America. Nothing. I mean, in terms of results, in recognition. And then just something. So it wasn't a need. He was still considering, in practical terms, that the Lilamrita says he would regularly go to the steam line or the boat docks and look when there are ships going back to India. Maybe I should get on one of those. Maybe it's not meant to be or something like that. But he stayed. And his visa, all that stuff. But it wasn't a need. It was being practical with Krishna's resource, time, and the ability and everything. So what do we do? Supposing there isn't a need in a pure devotee, we still give expressions of gratitude and service in terms of gratitude and offering nice things. But then that can and ideally it will grow into love, where I'm not fulfilling a need that I have to do something to express gratitude, but out of love. So it's a two-way thing, the master and the servant. And all I meant to say from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teaching is they're not on the same platform. Bhakti is pure. Bhakti can be mixed with the modes, and bhakti that's unmixed doesn't mean we don't feel gratitude and express it and live it towards the master and towards other devotees. Does that address your question?
Thank you, Maharaj. It perfectly answers the question.
Okay.
And can I ask my second question?
Sure.
Maharaj, my question, this one's also related. You said gratitude, if it grows, becomes love. Could you explain a little bit, like what are some things devotees can do in their daily lives so that this does happen effectively?
Something that I have grown to like and say it a lot, gratitude is a seed of love. That is, when we engage in devotional service in goodness, it's the best incubation chamber for love. So we don't trash gratitude or mode of goodness. It's a seed, it's a growing place. Because the seed itself is bhakti, not specifically the gratitude. But gratitude can be in connection to Krishna, and that's a seed. So seeds sprout when you nourish them, or water and sunlight, not too much, not too little. And so the seed can be grown. We don't squash it. We don't burn it. We don't fry it. We nurture it with devotion, with the understanding of what the goal is. The goal is unconditional, unmotivated devotional service. Anyabhilashita shunyam. That's the goal. So how long will that take? How long does it take to sprout a seed until it becomes a sprout and then a plant and then produce fruits and flowers? Different seeds grow at different paces, and different individuals, their seed of bhakti grows at different rates and so forth. So let's go to this little passage that I read from Hari Bhakti Vilas. It's not that everyone and anyone who observes Ekadasi by accident, in their next life they're going to become Prahlad. It means there's potency within that observance of Ekadasi, even accidentally. And then that's going to impact the heart of different persons in different ways. So he doesn't, Lord Nrsimha doesn't say, in the life previous to that when you were the son of Vasu Sharma, or Vasudev, who were you before you were Vasudev, the son of Vasu Sharma? Why did it impact Vasudev the way that it did? There's something back there. There's something. So there's a question yesterday about what does auspicious mean? So things that are done that are auspicious, like spiritually auspicious, like proper observance of the vow of Ekadasi. There's potency, spiritual potency within that. So same with gratitude. It's going to manifest itself differently with different people because of the so many different factors that are involved. So it's not a no to feel gratitude. It's a yes. But and how does that play itself out? How does one go from devotional service in the mode of goodness to transcendental, unmotivated, uninterrupted? It's lots and lots and lots of hearing. That's because that's how bhakti begins, hearing, and then emulating, following in the footsteps, getting good association of people who exemplify those principles of transcendental life. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. Okay. You have a third question. Go ahead.
You also said platform of duty, one can become disturbed by things sometimes. If you can please elaborate on that, like for example, If you're used to doing a service a certain way, and then somebody does it another way, you can get agitated. Is that what you're after? What do you?
Oh, it depends. There are different ways of what that could mean. That's a person that's in goodness. Let's go to Jad Bharat. Jad Bharat became disturbed. I mean, his life was threatened, and he was undisturbed. But something happened when King Rahugana twice said harsh things, and he became disturbed. It's right there in the verse, not in the purport, in the verse. For a moment, he became disturbed, and then very quickly he recovered. Now, it doesn't mean that he was a mode of goodness devotee, but there's an example of someone, even in an elevated state, can become disturbed and then very quickly recover. Now, it's just a worldly example because you're looking for examples. Supposing somebody's very generous and a philanthropist type, a mode of goodness type of person, and supposing somebody insults them for whatever the reason. This is useless, or something. They may bark. I've met some people like that. And I've learned to, be very careful because you don't disrespect, even with good intention, to say, that's nice, but, what are you doing for the soul? I just a personal experience. Someone was going on and on and on and on about their charity work. And I said, I made a mistake because I didn't read the person properly. I said, all of that's very nice, but what about the soul? And they exploded. I wasn't demeaning what they were doing, just pointing their attention to something additional. Because they're doing because they wanted. And when they didn't get what they wanted, it triggered one of the other modes besides goodness. So that can happen. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Is love of God something you can experience before performing on the platform
Before performing.
on the platform of Uttama Bhakti? Can you experience that or attain it?
Well, yeah. You can, one can experience a glimmer, the curtain can open and then the curtain can close. Should I elaborate?
Please.
Okay. I've noticed, just as a compliment, I've noticed that a number of the devotees here are in your Sangha, you like reading and you like discussing from what you've read. So I'm going to, so that's a compliment. There are 64 items of devotional service. 5 are considered by Rupa Goswami as the best, most important. And he even writes, you do any one of these 5 without offense, and even a neophyte can experience at once Baba. Now, is anyone going to stay on the Baba platform if we once experience? Not likely. It's possible, but not likely. So the curtain will close. Now that Prabha is not prema. Your question was love of God. So there's a glimmer of love of God by that experience of bhava. It's not everyone's going to experience that, but it's the potential, the potency is there within these 5 very, very special exchanges with Krishna, loving services unto Krishna, that they're so potent that even a neophyte, without offense, can experience bhava, bhakti. So there's a glimmer. Here's another example. Narada Muni, in his previous life, little boy, he was given a process of mantra and meditation, etc. So he traveled, and while engaged in meditation, he saw the form of Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu revealed his form, and then suddenly Lord Vishnu disappeared, and he was startled, and he looked around, where did he go? And he heard a voice, right in the Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 6. And the voice said, normally I don't show myself to one who's not fully pure, but I showed myself to encourage you. Now, for the rest of your life, please continue as you've been doing, and you will achieve me. There's an example. Is it possible was your question. The answer is it's possible. It's rare, but it's possible. Is that it? No, just hang on. Be polite. Hold your horses. Just sit down, sit down, sit down. You have something further? Yes.
So, is this, if you experience this glimmer, somehow similar to the situation with Narada Muni, and to encourage us to take that, and as much as we can do is probably work in bhakti in the mode of goodness to eventually elevate our consciousness to Uttama bhakti.
Yes. And so there's two things, effort and mercy. So one continues to make the effort, and the mercy may or may not come again, but it's unforgettable. In the case of Narada, he didn't see Lord Vishnu again, but he heard from Lord Vishnu that he would. Okay?
Maharaj, my question is in regarding devotional service can be
Yes, go
can
ahead.
be performed devotional service indirectly.
Yeah, of course.
For instance, when you grab a flower from the tree and you use it for offering to Krishna,
That's not indirectly, that's directly.
that living entity in the form of a tree also receives sukriti.
Of course.
For instance, the person that build this building, and after it's used for
Yes. Did you give other examples? The cow that gives the milk that we offer to Krishna, the cow gets spiritual benefit. The tree that supplies the fruit or the flower or the whatever. Okay?
okay,
Indirect, but they get benefit, for sure.
they get some benefit.
For sure. Spiritual. Unknowingly, it's called agyata sukriti. Unknowingly. Next, you have a follow-up. What's the follow-up? That's it. Okay. Anyone else in the room? Okay. Let's see if there's something online also. Go ahead.
Shravana Kirtana Pradhan, but in our Gaudiya Vaishnava, and there is also bhajana on this. So sometimes says the devotees, they become advanced. They are more interested in hearing and chanting. They may not too much get into too much activities, karma, or direct service. So if they get into that, sometimes we see, I mean, I have my experience in Mayapur. I saw sometimes devotees were been criticized. I mean, they've been thrown out from the temple even for mostly, just engaging in Shravanam Kirtan and not doing practical service. So what do you say? Because Now, some devotees in their time of years of spending service in the temple or within the movement, so we should if they're interested in Sravana Kirtan, the management should encourage that instead of criticizing them or trying to take them out of the temple. Because I see most of in the Srimad Bhagavatam Prabhupada writes so many places that
Okay, this is an institutional question. Give him the microphone. You know, I'll just, for the benefit of others, I'll repeat. There was a disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that was such a personality. He was so absorbed in chanting. And when Bhakti Siddhanta was traveling to the temples, the temple devotees informed him, there's this devotee, he doesn't do any practical service. He just wants to chant. So what to do? And Bhakti Siddhanta said, he's qualified, so let him chant. He's qualified, not he has a liking, but he's qualified. So now, what about somebody that's not qualified? Here's an example during Prabhupada's lifetime. I'll say his name because he's a lovable disciple of Prabhupada. Vishal. You've heard his name? Vishal. Vishal. He joined in Los Angeles, and he was kind of chubby, and he had kept his hand in his bead bag all day long, and he wouldn't do any service because anytime somebody asked him, he would do other things except service, like talk. And, he was a talker. He was like a nice, affable person. Talk, talk, talk. So one morning, I was there on the morning walk with Prabhupada. This is in Vrindavan. And Vishal was waiting for Prabhupada outside the main gate. Prabhupada turned right. Vishal prostrated himself in front of everybody, including Prabhupada, to pay his obeisances. So Prabhupada stopped. Vishal got up with a big smile, and Prabhupada said to him very clearly, Vishal, do something practical. Meaning, this is my understanding, he wasn't qualified. It wasn't like he was a Bhajananandi, he just was avoiding. So there's gradations in between, which is what your question is. There's the Uttama person, and there's the pretender person. And then there's persons that are on the way. So that's an institutional choice, and sometimes it can lean this way, and sometimes it can lean that way. And a responsible leader needs to look at the qualification of the person. That's my answer. And and because there's Haridas Thakur, but at the same time, Haridas Thakur was appreciated by Sanatana Goswami as you're the best in prachar as well as achar. Along with his chanting, he was teaching, and how he was teaching. He was teaching by example, but he was also giving teachings. Along with all of his chanting, he had opportunities for speaking. He didn't go with Nagar Sankirtan. He did what he did. So this is it depends. One of the big dependency factors is what's somebody's real qualification. And since we're part of a mission, certainly Bhakti Siddhanta was very strong in the mission, and yet he gave sanction for someone to not do practical service because they was qualified. So the balance has to go into what is qualification, and is there some way, A, B, C, D, where somebody that likes bhajan can do some practical service also, whatever that might be. gather flowers for the deities, or something that's innocuous, but it's part of enhancing their bhakti life. So whatever that might be. Online?
One question, Maharaj.
Okay.
By Sucharita Mataji.
Slow.
As an affirmation or anticipation for a soul to be able to go back to Godhead, would it be nice if
Would it be nice?
would it be nice
Nice.
if one thinks of meeting Krishna every moment?
Well, if you're a very elevated soul, fantastic. And that would be very nice to become a very elevated soul and to think of that at every moment. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.